I was born, raised, educated, and spent all of my life before Boston in New Jersey. Woo! Which is both a source of pride and then a source of shame sometimes when I'm talking to other people, but it is mostly a source of pride. But yeah, so I went to Princeton for undergrad, and the thing that I think of, especially coming in tonight when I know so many of my peers are at a consulting recruiting event, which, you know, I can't really compete with the Ritz. We've got some pretty good stuff there. I remember how lost I was when I was graduating, when I didn't have an offer from any of the companies I applied to. I came into my graduation day. It should have been a day of such tremendous joy. I'd written an over 100-page thesis. I managed to make friends that I still have. But I was miserable because I didn't have a job, and I was told that if I didn't have a job, or at least the message that I was downloading was I was worthless. And none of it mattered because BCG didn't want me, Goldman didn't want me, Teach for America didn't want me, Teach for China didn't want me. I studied Chinese in college, and Teach for China didn't want me. So I was really confused, and at that point, I didn't really have a sense of self when I graduated. I was sitting in my chair with this black and orange lei that was pretty jolly and joyful, and all I was thinking about was how I didn't have a job and how I had messed up a relationship thrown together at the last minute in my last 3 weeks of undergrad with someone who was very emotionally unfulfilling. And then some. But, sorry for watching this. But I was very lucky that after I graduated, it wouldn't take me that long before, after a 6-month lead time, I finally get the job that would move me to Boston. And when I came here, I was lucky to be in a job opportunity with a bunch of like-minded people, some really smart women, two of whom are in the audience tonight. And to really have the experience that I didn't find myself having in college, which was to go out and party and drink a full bottle of Bombay Sapphire the night of the London Olympics, to pay my tribute to England, and then wake up feeling absolutely shattered. Because in college, I was really a workaholic. That's where I found my meaning, which would then lead me graduating without feeling much meaning at all. About 2 months into moving to Boston, a lot of people here who have talked to me know that I'm gluten-free and not by choice. I got diagnosed with celiac disease 2 months after moving to Boston. I'd been tired for most of my university career. I thought that college makes you tired, work makes you tired, but really I'd been sick this entire time, and I had no idea. And this was a huge change for me, especially I was in an all-female a cappella group where whenever we had to go out for dinner as a group, it was always a struggle. We had like a vegan, we had a vegetarian, we had someone who could not eat specific carbohydrates and all that. And I was always like, oh, why can't we just go get a cheeseburger? Like, is it really that big a deal? 2 months after graduation, I become the person I dreaded going out to dinner with. And especially for one of my closest friends at the time who really likes pizza and burgers, this was going to be an interesting growth opportunity in our relationship. But that was really hard. And I felt so uncomfortable asking people for help in anything. Asking people to try to understand me, that I wasn't doing this for the fad, that I wasn't doing it because I wanted attention, that I wasn't doing it to be an inconvenience, that I genuinely had to ask for help to get what I needed. That was hard for me, because in everything else I'd ever done, I could go it alone. I could stay up until 1 trying to figure out how, I came into college as an engineer, so in this case, torque, which I didn't really figure out, or I don't remember anything from linear algebra at this point. But I mean, I managed to study Chinese, because that was my version of popping out with the engineering program. But if I could study Chinese, like I could figure anything out. And yet asking for help from people was so hard. Because I never really had to do it. I was uncomfortable with doing it. And then eventually, as I started getting used to the whole diet thing, I had to spend most of my days, I was lucky, I had a very flexible job as a case writer at that business school across the river, which allowed me to go to doctors and get that kind of help, at least. Eventually, I had to get a procedure, get an endoscopy, which is a very comfortable thing when the tube is shoved down your throat. But they put you under, and the spray kind of tastes like bubble gum in a really weird way. It's kind of cool. Somewhere along the lines, I had realized that the way that I had been living and experiencing my own life was no longer tolerable. And it took a few weird little breakups, a hookup with a guy with blue hair, and other things. My first fall in Cambridge, only in Cambridge, but maybe in Portland too, to get me into this yoga class at Athleta. For anyone who's walked down on Newbury Street in the Back Bay, if you are new to the area, you should. It's a great walk, especially on Sundays when all the Europeans are off buying things, and people from Asia as well. And they have these free fitness classes, and being, a yuppie, but without the real financial stuff going on, I would take advantage of every free fitness class in this place I'd get. And I decided the first one I was going to go to was the night before this endoscopy. My mom had come to visit because I was going to be going under tomorrow, and I couldn't get myself home. When you have procedures like this, you can't just get the cabbie to drive you home. You need someone to sign you out. And it took me 10 years to go back to a yoga class, to be willing to get on a mat and just sit there and listen to somebody tell me how to upward face my dog and to chata once. There was a shift that day. And I continued to go to these free classes at Athleta on Newbury Street. And one Saturday morning, I met this woman, her name's Catherine, and she was a women's life coach, which sounded like the hokiest thing. My mom had pushed some life coach stuff on me, in the fall, thinking that, you're really unhappy with your life and you seem to have exhausted therapy and friends and codependent relationships with boyfriends, so maybe you should try something different. She never knew how to express all of it, but that's what I would identify it as now. And I went up to this woman after the yoga class. She made us pull an affirmation card. This is getting some real new age stuff here. And I asked her if she'd be willing to take me on as a client, and she did. And so that was in May of 2013. And by June of 2013, I was heading to my first reunion in college. And there was so much emotional baggage that I had going into it. I was thinking where I was last year and how troubled I felt. And the moment in which I realized that I had definitely changed was when I saw this guy, this emotionally unsatisfying person, and I was able to look him in the eye. Conversation didn't last longer than 30 seconds, but that spell, that mental fog that I had been suffering and living under and breathing in, like smog, vanished. It was this is how I know I'm getting on the path to somewhere good. So I continued working with Catherine, and she was actually running the yoga retreat. And by the way, this is not just some shameless plug for yoga. I would argue it's great. It's not great for everyone, but there were certain things that make this. I can't imagine how else things would have unfolded if I hadn't been willing to get on that mat the night before that endoscopy. So anyway, I go on this yoga retreat with Catherine. It's in New Hampshire, a Dragonfly Yoga Barn. I highly recommend it, whether you're getting married or just want to get a nice weekend away. It's beautiful. And I came back from that weekend with these 14 women, total strangers, more or less. I came back with a really strong relationship in some way, shape, or form with each of them. And I came back with two intentions in mind, which are as close to an epiphany as I've ever had. One, that I was going to start a food business. And two, that I wanted to apply to business school. And business school was something I put on the back burner because I applied to 2+2 at HBS and I hadn't gotten in. And I was like, what, the next time I apply to this whole program you should do the law, I want to be ready. I want to know exactly why I'm doing it. And something in the water up there in New Hampshire on that weekend, on August 26th, I came back and I bought a website domain, I bought business cards, I started a Facebook page, I started designing a logo. All of this happened in the span of 24 hours of coming back from this retreat. It still baffles me that even happened, that I actually did this. And I scrambled to throw an application together for MIT within 3 weeks. And over the course of that time too, the next few months I did a fundraising campaign. Within a few months I had a kitchen contract to work with a local bakery to produce things legally as opposed to in my own kitchen, which turns out you can't do in Cambridge. I've looked into it a few times. It's definitely more cost efficient, but it's not technically legal. I am still in awe of how that all happened, that I would be able to get into 4 different farmers markets less than 6 months after starting something, that I would have a legitimate operating kitchen, that I would feed over like 100 people in the local Boston food area. None of that seemed possible when I moved here. None of it even seemed possible the weekend before I went to that farm. And it suddenly was. And I remember when I hit my fundraising goal for the Indiegogo campaign I run, it was Thanksgiving. And I felt I was like, I'm thankful for many things, but I'm really thankful that I made my funding goal so I don't have to give money to credit card companies for, it's all about like how Indiegogo is pricing. But I was so thankful that day to see how many people I was able to reach out to and how some of the support came from places I didn't even expect. Like $100 from somebody in high school I hadn't spoken to in years. It was baffling. At the same time, though, I was still struggling with a lot of self-doubt and self-loathing, the kind of stuff that had not quite gone away from the experience I had in undergrad. And I knew that it was still there on the day that I got into MIT. So it was, I also applied to Kellogg. I'd gotten the call 2 days before I would hear from MIT. Well, I didn't get a call, I got the email that they didn't want me. And I was back in that mentality from college with, if I don't have this marker that I am good enough, what am I worth? I remember a terrible phone call with my parents in which they were just feeling very tormented about what I was going to do. And I didn't have an answer for them. At this point I was catastrophizing it, and I didn't know what was going to happen the next 2 days. But I was depressed again. I was depressed like I just graduated college. Like all of that progress and personal growth work had just vanished. And then it was 8:43 in the morning after a night of watching Gossip Girl to its conclusion on Netflix. 8:43 in the morning, my mom sends me a text that says, "Have faith." And 3 minutes later, I get the call from admissions. And I'm sitting in a green self-picture, which I brought with me because I didn't want to grab it and get a prop. I hadn't even hung my mirror in my apartment. I remember seeing the complimentary cards. My face is bright red in like tears of joy. And I'm wearing this green shirt, I'm in my underwear, and I'm like on my knees in front of this mirror just being like, remember this moment. Remember this. Because the night before I had been looking across the river. I live in the West End. And I was thinking like, tomorrow's going to be the day when I find out, do I get to cross that river from Boston into Cambridge and make that part of my next 2 years? Or do I have to stay on this side? And the day I got into MIT was a phenomenal day. I went to the bakery where I'd been working and cracked open 2 bottles of champagne. It was awesome. And by champagne, I mean Andre. But even after that, the love and the joy, it wore off again. And I couldn't figure out quite why. And the fact that Catherine had been in a fellowship program, she'd slowly been guiding me towards something involving 12 steps. And that's when I realized that I had something in my life that I would call an addiction. And the reason that no matter how hard I put my nose to the grindstone on this one thing, there was always the reason I kept feeling like I wasn't good enough, the reason that I could not solve some certain problems that I had was because of that. And I had been unwilling to admit it to myself. And the day I got into Sloan, when I realized that could not make me happy on its own, that was when I really needed to get on my knees, be willing, and ask for help. So it was a few days before the new year where I went to my first 12-step meeting. And it was something that was in denial for a while, and I didn't really start taking it seriously until February. But that process made me more self-aware, develop a greater sense of purpose coming into every day than I could have possibly imagined. I ended a relationship that lasted 7 months last week at this point. And I think that the me that graduated from Princeton would have been torn up about it for months, would have been torturing herself about it, maybe longer than that. But I learned that that's not, I didn't need to live in a place where my life felt unmanageable. I didn't need to live in a place where I just didn't have faith in the people around me, and I didn't need to live as if I had no reason to have faith in myself. That being hard on myself was serving nobody. It wasn't serving me, it wasn't serving my ability to help other people. And in many ways, I am still extremely hard on myself. Everyone here is on a journey and is a work in progress. But I now know that, if nothing else, I heard it today loud and clear in this presentation this afternoon, that asking for help, courage is asking for help. And there's something so powerful in people's ability to be vulnerable. So even if I have totally lost you over the course of these couple of minutes, I want to say that you aren't alone. It is okay to ask for help. And if you extend your hand, even just a little bit, you will be met. And that the first thing that Catherine ever told me is actually the thing I want to know, that life is not happening to you. It is happening for you. And that's all I got to say.